Yeah, Karen had some trouble, some issues with her phone and other things. So she said to introduce you, but I maybe you can introduce yourself. And this is the Reco12 podcast, and we're really happy to have you here, Jonathan. And if you want to introduce yourself and start your share, that would be delightful. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
No, thank you for having me. Sure. So as everyone knows, my name is Jonathan. I was like a business manager in the entertainment space. I represented high net worth individuals from music, film, TV, and professional sports. I became a partner at a boutique entertainment business management firm. And
I apologize. Did you already start?
no, go ahead. We were just going to start, so it's perfect.
I'm super, super, super sorry. I just totally lost my head. I was in the pharmacy and I didn't realize what time it was. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for your patience.
Recording again, maybe, because it's been recorded.
Brian, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Justin will edit it. I apologize, and Justin will edit it. So, welcome to the Afro-Euro Reco12. We're a family of recovered people in all fellowships, all addictions, all afflictions. You could check us out at reco12.com, whether you're a gambler, a love addict, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a scroller, a shopper, an anorexic, a bulimic, a compulsive overeater, and the list goes on. Hopefully you could find someone who will share their experience, strength, and hope with you there. We're having this meeting live. However, it is recorded and hundreds of people listen. We're going to have our guest share for about 20, 25 minutes. You can time yourself, or if someone wants to keep time, you'll let us know in a sec. And make sure to write down your questions. We'll have time for Q&A with our guest, Jonathan S. I'll put together some questions and I'll have you guys ask some questions and we will take it from there. If you would like to contribute a seventh tradition, you could go to reco12.com/support. Without further ado, Jonathan, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you so much and welcome. We look forward to hearing from your story and gaining experiences and hope. You bet.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Yeah, I'm not sure where you want me to start. I mean, I can start from wherever you want, but my experience really started when I was, a child. I was I was raised by a single mother, starting from age 4. I had a younger brother. My father abandoned our family when I was 4, and my mother was forced to take, 3 jobs to put food on the table for us. I grew up in upstate New York, and I've experienced a lot of trauma. I'm 55 years old. The first 46 years of my life, I suppressed all of my emotions. And one of my favorite parts of the big book I'd like to read to you really sort of epitomizes my life as an adult and maybe even in adolescence. And it reads as follows. More than most people, and I'll say the alcoholic, but you can substitute any addiction for this. The alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension that makes more for drinking or whatever one's drug of choice or behavioral addiction is. And why that resonates with me is because, like I said moments ago, I never really knew how to connect with my emotions. They were suppressed inside me for 46 years. And because of that, that trauma, I believe that it contributed to my maladaptive behaviors, including my addiction. I don't use excuses. I take full responsibility for my poor choices that resulted. in active addiction. And but I did try and live this life of pseudo Jonathan, pretending he was this successful business manager in entertainment space, representing artists like Beyonce, Linkin Park, Mariah Carey, and many others. And while I never was enamored by the entertainment industry because they put their shoes and socks on the same way I do, and we all do, the reality is I was very insecure. I had a high ego, all trying to pretend that I was Superman while I'm going through my active addiction, and then also going through, followed by, my white collar criminal crime. I uh, embezzled significant monies from a handful of clients. As a result of that, I was in May of 2017, I was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Uh, I got out of federal prison early because of COVID. I have coronary artery disease, so I was a candidate to get out early, at which point I was on 16 months of home confinement, followed by 3 years of probation. I hurt a lot of people as a result of my addiction, and also my poor choices. Mainly, I hurt my three beautiful sons, two of whom I really haven't reconnected with in 9 years. The elder son and I connect maybe 4 times a year. He doesn't call me dad, he calls me Jonathan. That's again the consequences of my poor choices. My middle son still is traumatized by what happened to me. My younger son and I speak every day. My mom has stage 4 lung cancer for over a decade. She's my rock. She never complains. But obviously, I hurt her very much as well. And my stepfather, I hurt the people in the entertainment community, my partners, my employees, and, the whole industry as a whole. I hurt the community in which I live in. So there's countless people that I hurt as a result of my poor choices. I don't forget my past, but I don't live in my past. And, going to prison was probably something that I needed, with the ego and all the other character defects I had, violating my fiduciary capacity as I was a CPA, entertainment business manager, and I violated the fiduciary responsibility of 5, 6 of my clients who were direct victims of my crime. But I also violated the fiduciary responsibility, moral compass, and integrity that I thought I had to those that I did not harm directly, because they put trust in me to manage their finances, whether it was their touring world, their merchandise world, their individual lives, their songwriting and publishing, whatever it was. I mean, my poor choices had a ripple effect on so many people, and I own that. And I think that's part of recovery. And today, when after prison and when I was released into society, no one wanted to hire me. I had no money. I was a felon. And so ultimately, it took me months when I re-entered society to get a job. And I got my first job, and I'm well educated. I got my first job at Dunkin' Donuts. And frankly, I needed a job like Dunkin' Donuts because I needed to be humbled more than I already thought I was. And it brought me some humility, which I think was a message from my higher power. And after 2, 3 months, I got another message from a higher power. I got fired from Dunkin' Donuts because I wasn't mopping the floors well enough or cleaning the countertops or other things I just wasn't doing well. And after that, I took another job. I got fortunate enough to work in another job, but also working for an auto dealership here in California, Lexus. And in California, the Department of Motor Vehicles oversees auto salesperson licenses. So they gave me, by mistake, a 3 to 4 month provisional license. Into month 3 of my employment, I received a note from the Department of Motor Vehicles saying my provisional license was suspended because of my background. And, without ego, I decided out of principle and pro recovery behavior to ask for an administrative hearing in which I received. During that hearing, the judge saw all of my rehabilitation and recognized that I went to an addiction studies school to become a licensed, alcohol and drug counselor, followed by being enrolled in grad school, changing my careers to a career path that leads me to help my brothers and sisters struggling with addiction and mental health, and became a marriage and family therapist with an emphasis in addiction and trauma. Despite all of that, and the judge's willingness to allow me to retain my job as a salesperson, a lawyer, the head lawyer for the Department of Motor Vehicles, said, and I'll never forget this, he said, auto salespeople is the number one profession filled with workers that have integrity. The old Jonathan in active addiction would have become very defensive and said things such as, "Are you kidding me?" The Jonathan in pro recovery learns to accept that he cannot control the outcome. And it's another form of humility. And I learned to just accept that that's what it was. The way I live my life today, in that sense, is that I would not have been part of that administrative hearing if I didn't do what I did. So my poor choices resulted in these actions, and I have no one to blame but myself. And so today I'm the happiest I've ever been, in the sense that I have a job that's completely fulfilling. I am a program director at Altus Rehab, which is a 6-bed luxury detox and residential in Encino, California. I also do teletherapy with Chabad Treatment Center in Los Angeles. And the joy I get every day from at least trying to help people who want help and make very little money is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. And you know what? It also really helps to fulfill me. Obviously the 12th step and one of the principles is being of service. And that's, I make very little money. And in the past, as I said, I made a lot of money. Money never brought me happiness. I feel complete in my soul. I feel whole. And it's because of this program. I had a gambling addiction. I embezzled over $7 million. Clients were paid back, but it doesn't make what I did wrong right. Uh, into my 6-year gambling run, I spiraled out of control and became addicted to cocaine. And I have coronary artery disease, and I was now snorting coke 24/7. Nobody knew about my gambling. I maintained this dark secret, and that's why I talk about leading a double life when I started to read the big book. I led a double life. Nobody knew, not my wife, not my ex-wife, not my children, not my partners, not employees, not any single soul. So aside from not dealing with my childhood trauma, now I'm concealing this criminal behavior that started in 2010 to about 2016. Cannot sleep at night. And every time I hear a siren, I'm in fear that I'm going to get caught. And in 2015, subconsciously, I wanted to get caught. I couldn't take this pain. I couldn't take this lie. I couldn't look in the mirror and smile, but just feel disgust at what I was doing and how many people I was hurting. But as I said earlier, I don't live in the past. I won't say we. I choose not to live in guilt and shame, but I certainly don't forget all the wrongs that I've done. Um, and today, I like to talk about when I'm in leading groups or in therapy, I like to talk about the difference between the two meanings of two different words to me. There's abstinence, which is essentially being clean from any substances, or right, and then there's sober. Sober is a lifestyle in which one adheres to pro-recovery behavior. And my lifestyle today is congruent with pro-recovery behavior. I'm not perfect. In fact, I'm very far from perfect. But the beauty of this program is it's a program of progress and not perfection. A lot of people in early recovery use the word sober um, when they're not really having behavior that's congruent with that pro-recovery, because they're 10 days sober or abstinent or 30 days abstinent. That's the start, and that's hard to get to even one day. And they should be very proud of that. But really, for me, in order to maintain a sustainable recovery, I not only have to be or get to be abstinent from gambling or my drugs of choice, but I also have to wake up every morning or get to wake up every morning and do the next right action. And what I like to do is in real time today, I like to course correct the narrative in my head. I've had to rewire my subconscious so that my default wasn't in survival mode, fight and flight mode, you know? So, and I do that daily. I try not to use words that are absolutes like always. And I can recognize that in real time and change it. I don't create expectations. You know, just like a silly example, you know, if you know, today in recovery, if I see a woman or a man, child, and you know, I'm going to hold the door for that person. In active addiction, I may not have done that. And for me, being able to compare and contrast, still almost 9 years sober and abstinent, um, I like to recognize the progress I make. And that for me in that example would be progress. And I like to compare and contrast because I want to see every day, or at least most days, that I'm trying to take the next right action. It's really important for my personal recovery. You know, it's going to Starbucks and getting a cup of coffee. You know, one of my million defects of character was impatient. You know, an active addiction, you know, two people are ahead of me and I'm getting frustrated because Jonathan's not getting served his cafe, you know, his latte. And that's what I thought in active addiction. In pro recovery behavior, I could stand in line and I don't care how many people are in front of me because I'm no greater than anybody else. And people can take the time that they want. And I get to make the choice, you know, do I have to really be somewhere? And if so, I'll leave. Not because of being impatient, just because, you know what, there's a line and I have to be at work at a certain time. In active addiction, I would have created a scene. In recovery, there's no such scene needed. And so I'm really proud of my pro recovery behavior. I'm really proud of who I've become and who I'm becoming. And you know, I just get so much joy out of everything. You know, when I first started to rewind a little bit in this program on May 9th, 2016, I was working with the sponsor. The, you know, the sponsor said to me, you know, said, okay, here's step one. We admitted we were powerless over, in my case, in gambling and cocaine, that our lives had become unmanageable. I was in such denial way before day one of starting my recovery journey. But when doing the steps, I said to my sponsor, I don't understand what you mean. Jonathan, powerlessness and unmanageable? I really just couldn't understand the simplicity of step one. And he said to me, and I'll never forget as well, he said, Schmuck, you're facing a sentence that could exceed 20 years in prison. You don't think your life is you're powerless over your life and your life has become unmanageable? I said, you know what? Good point. And I really needed to hear that because, again, that just showed me as I entered the 12-step program, I still had such a high ego despite being so insecure and a people pleaser and low self-esteem and, you know, dozens and dozens of other defects of character that I have. And by the way, defects of character for me certain ones can rise to the surface on a daily basis. And that's what makes my strong self-awareness so vital to my sustainability of maintaining sobriety. Because I am so self-aware when my defects of character surface, I can course correct that, recognize it in real time, and either change it internally within my mindset, or I call my sober peers, or I call my sponsor, you know. And so I never thought I'd say this, but this program has honestly saved my life. Um, it's brought me the things that sobriety does afford us. You know, for me, it affords me a roof over my head. You know, when I came out of prison, I could have been homeless, if not for the help of my mother. You know, as I said earlier, I'm 55, and you know, I came out of prison. I was about 50, and here I am asking mommy to help me. But again, that's the beauty of family and the beauty of loved ones that surround me in my inner circle today because they support me and they don't judge me. You know, I want to touch on that, and you know, feel free to, you know, I can stop if you want me to and take questions. But one thing that I learned when I was first taught, and it was aired all over the media here in the United States. I was working with an Eastern Western medicine doctor. And this doctor called me. He saw what happened to me and what I did on the news, and he said, "I want you to meet me at this house You just need to wear a suit. I had no idea what I was entering. I went to the house the next day. I walk in and there's a rabbi giving a eulogy to someone's funeral at someone's house. I know nobody. And I'm like, why am I being asked to go to a funeral? And when we left, exited the house, the doctor said to me, Jonathan, what's your takeaway from this? I had to think for a moment, and I realized in that moment what my takeaway was, and also what the purpose of me being there was. My takeaway was that in the height of my career, where everyone thought I was Superman and living the American dream in a with a white picket fence house and all the material things that are so not important to me today, but were important to me in active addiction, was that at the height of my career, let's say, and I'm making up this number, 600, 700, 500, whatever it is, a large number of people would have attended my funeral. Those people, about 98% of them, would not have been there for, because they cared about me, Jonathan, but rather out of professional obligation. Today, if I were to pass away, I would say maybe 50, 60 people come, and you know what? Those 50, 60 people care about me. And that's why for me today, what's so important is not the quantity of people, because I'm no longer a people pleaser, but rather surrounding myself with healthy people in the form of quality people, people that support me, and even people that don't, but they're still healthy for me, because I still today, and likely for the rest of my life, will continue to earn back the trust, not through this mouth that lied, that's manipulative, that was dishonest, that was deceitful. So I don't want people to trust what comes out of my mouth anymore. I want to show them through my actions every day. That's why this program for me is a program of taking daily the next right action, right? And so I try to do that. I try to do it to the best of my abilities. And by the way, that funeral was a staged funeral, because the person that put this on feared death, and he wanted to hear what people would say about him. At the time, I believe it was in 2000, um, I don't know, mid 2000s, it became very popular, but I didn't even recognize what I was walking into. So I know I'm kind of going all over the place. I kind of wanted to give you a little macro overview of my journey. Um, I don't like to use the journey to redemption. I like to use it to journey to a meaningful life. And I needed to be in prison. I needed to be humbled. I needed to feel the consequences of, for 6 years, gambling with a bookie and taking and stealing money from clients every week when I had to pay my bookie. I mean, these are the consequences. And one of the things, among many things, I also share with my clients now in treatment is, it's really you work with a sponsor, you do the steps, but if you're an alcoholic early in recovery and you're going to a grocery store with all the aisles of alcohol there, it's going to be really hard to pick up that 500-pound phone and call your sponsor or call sober peers. And so what I encourage my clients to do is something that now I have ingrained in my mind, wasn't ingrained early in recovery, was to identify their negative consequences, and not just identify their negative consequences verbally or have it get ingrained in their mind, but much like someone carries a purse or a wallet, a driver's license or ID, write down, 5, 6 of your negative consequences. It becomes really powerful because you're the author of it. I'm not suggesting what one's negative consequences are when I lead a group or provide therapy. I'm inviting them to identify their negative consequences and write it down. For me, visual aids really help. And so, by way of example, if my negative consequences today, which are ingrained, but going back to people in treatment, it's easier to look in your wallet and read what you wrote as your negative consequences, despite having intense cravings. Maybe because you can't pick up that phone I talked about, looking at what you wrote might deter you from taking that first sip or using that first drug or gambling or having an addiction to sex and disrespecting, the recipients, whether it's man, woman, or otherwise. And for me, I'll give you an example of what I look for when I ask them or invite them to write this list down. My list, as I said, is in my head. So for me, number one, I would disappoint my higher power as a negative consequence. My higher power is everything. I surrender most every day to my higher power, multiple times with my higher power. I have a very strong connection to my higher power today, power greater than Jonathan. Two, I would disappoint the pride I take in my own recovery. Three, the likelihood of earning back the trust of my two of my three beautiful sons, my ex-wife, my mother battling stage 4 lung cancer, my stepfather, my sober peers. I'm not willing to do that. Four, I would likely lose my job. And five, I'd likely be homeless. For me, those negative consequences to date, as I see it here today with all of you, and again, it's an honor to be present here, I'm sober. But I can wake up, with 9 years, 10 years, 20 years, and have the same a challenge in the morning that someone who has 1, 2, or 3 days. But I've armed myself with coping skills and a tool chest that I use in time of need. And so, again, for me, I'm certainly far from perfect. I continue to make progress. And what really helps me is to surround myself with the people on this Zoom. I may not know you, but you're my brothers and you're my sisters. And I hope you accept me as your brother. And for that, I really would love to take questions. I would love to answer anything. I'm completely transparent. There's nothing I will hide. You can ask any question you want, and I'd be happy to share that and incorporate that into my own life experience.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. This was truly, truly special to hear your story and to hear about cleaning up the past, still being imperfect, still doing your best. I really took to heart what you said of like, I'm not perfect, but I'm really proud that I do this. And I'm really proud that I could, be patient waiting for my latte or, in my case, letting someone, cut me off in traffic or let a kid cross the street, wherever we may be. Why don't you look in the chat and see what questions were posted there? And I'm fine with people coming in live with questions as well. I would like to hear a little bit about your working with others, if you sponsor, how many people you sponsor, but let's leave that if there are no questions. In the meantime, let's take what's in the chat.
So I don't see anything in the chat. I see that you asked, or Karen asked people to put questions in the chat. I just don't see any.
Okay, so I ask you to think about working with others, how fast through the steps, when you started sponsoring, how many sponsors you take, what important messages about becoming a sponsor, getting a sponsor.
Sure. As I said, I started working the steps. My sober date is May 9th, 2016. I started working the steps probably around May, a few days thereafter. I worked with Charlie S., a wonderful man who I'm indebted to because I wasn't the best sponsee. As I said, the challenge I had with step 1 and challenges I had with so many other steps, step 4, resentment, and identifying my character defects. As I started the journey working the steps, that ego was still very present. And that's the beauty of these 12 steps. I believe they really should be a program for everyone in the world, not just people struggling with addiction. I think, it can really help us as a society improve ourselves. But who am I to make that suggestion? For me, I would not be here today with this privilege to talk to everyone um, without this program. I would not be able to be where I am without this program today. I do sponsor right now. I have about 7, 8 sponsees. Uh, my time is limited now. I'd like to take more eventually. I get great joy at receiving a call and someone asking for help. That's really important. Had I asked for help in my criminal behavior during my act of addiction, my consequences would have been significantly less. But because of that ego and because of growing up in a generation of time where asking for help, at least by me, was seen as a weakness and not a strength. Today, it's all about asking for help. Part of the many messages I spread when I do speaking engagements or with clients is please ask for help. Have the courage to be vulnerable. I'm incredibly vulnerable today. I wasn't always. Um, and I believe I want to be like, people may laugh, but I want to be like the male version of Brene Brown. I want to continue to send so many beautiful messages like she does. The courage to be vulnerable, the courage to cry, the courage to connect with your emotions, and simply the courage to just ask for help. So I love when my sponsees call and ask, they're struggling with something, not that they're literally struggling with something that I love, but they have the willingness to call. And, my role is to help them. I've learned sometimes the hard way that as not only a sponsor, but as a therapist, a program director, that I can't help everyone. As much as I try and want to, sometimes a sponsee might relapse. And I used to take that personally. I've learned that I don't take it personally anymore, but I also don't take credit for when a sponsee can maintain his or her sobriety. Most of my sponsees, in fact, all of them are men. But I don't believe that's not, it's not because of me. It's someone has a strong program and is sober. I'm just the sponsor helping them, sharing, walking them through the steps the way I was walked through the steps. Sometimes I'm a good fit for someone, and maybe sometimes I'm not. And I can accept that. And so being of service comes, yes, in the form for me of being a sponsor. But I realized when I got into this work as in treatment, that working with brothers and sisters that enter substance use treatment centers is the most rewarding thing, as I said earlier. I also realize that cannot be my sole program. In other words, just because I'm immersed with sober peers and clients all day trying to um, strengthen their recovery to their drugs of choice or behaviors, that's not Jonathan's program. That cannot be just my only program. So I continue to still work the 12 steps, not just as a sponsor, but also as a sponsee, not just someone who just finished my term as secretary of my home group. I love going to my home group. I never thought I would love going to the 12 steps. In fact, when I first started in this program, I'm like, I'm not going to go to 12 steps. I don't need help. It's a cult. I'm not doing any of this. Who are these people? Well, these people are people just like me, and the beauty of the fellowship means the world to me. Coming to a room and having a safe place to share my struggles and people there to either crosstalk or talk to me after the meeting or share in their own share something relative to what I may have shared earlier. That's powerful. A room where people are not judging the way my mind works and the commonality of someone who has addiction and the way the addictive mind works. There's no other place I'd like to be. And so for me today, like it's not my only program working in treatment. It's also the 12 steps. And just because I believe in the 12 steps, there are other sort of alternatives to the 12-step program. But for me, the 12-step program is the program that I choose to be in. I get to be in because it's a privilege. And without my sober peers, without my quality inner circle of friends, again, not quantity, without working and seeing people struggling every day in a treatment center, many wanting to get better, and others who are just there and going through the motion. And who am I to judge those people, but just offer them more help if they want it? So that's my role of being of service. Being of service is what this program is really all about, among other things. And I don't take that lightly. And it's not a job, it's a passion. I'm paying forward what others gave to me. For me, I don't even look at it as obligation. It's just the right thing to do. And listen, I struggle like everybody. It doesn't matter what my sober time is. As I said earlier, I'm susceptible to a relapse tomorrow morning, or it's in California. It's almost 1 a.m. I can go back to sleep for a few hours, wake up, and I don't know. Maybe I could be triggered, but I want to put myself in the best possible place not to, by arming myself with the tools I mentioned earlier and just surrounding myself with quality people. I don't have unhealthy people in my life today. Sure, there are a lot of people that still very much judge me and still very much dislike me. And I can accept that because I hurt a lot of people. But that's not going to take me off my course of commitment to recovery. I don't live to people please anymore. I'm not insecure anymore. I have a healthy version of an ego. I have tremendous humility, and each day I try and make it even more. So this is a program, as I keep saying, and will always say, or not always, but you see how I'm able to course correct by using an absolute, often just doing the next right thing, and it's a program of progress. So I hope I answered your question about being of service and the importance that is to me. I don't see any other questions. Can I please share uh, my daily steps 10, 11, and 12? Sure. So, in step 10, I do take that personal inventory of my defects of character. As I mentioned earlier, I have strong self-awareness, and I use the self-awareness to self-talk. So if I see procrastination, one of my quadrillion defects of character, rise to the surface in a given moment, if I'm self-aware that I'm seeing some more stuff going on.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
So I see other questions, so I'll continue. So with step 10, I think this is really important. If I have strong self-awareness of one is strong self-awareness, then the next step is self-talk. For me, this is a powerful tool. So I see procrastination coming to the surface, and I immediately can self-talk and say, Jonathan, you're procrastinating. This is due today at 5 p.m. and it's 3:45 p.m. and you still haven't started. Let's get to it. So I do a daily inventory throughout the day in real time. I don't wait till the nighttime. I don't wake up and do it. I'm so self-aware and so concerned about my defects of character coming to the surface in a given moment that I'm able to course correct it through that positive self-talk. Now you can't, at least not, I don't have the ability to start with self-talk and followed by self-awareness, because how do you start with self-talk if you're not aware of what you want to talk about or need to talk about? So for me, it's so critical to have strong self-awareness of our behaviors, of our way that our thoughts are going on in our head. Are we catastrophizing? Are we negative thinking, which is the default of myself in active addiction? Are those things coming to the surface again? And when I am catastrophizing, which it does happen again, I'm human, I am able to change the negative thinking to reality-based positive self-talk. And that's why self-talk is so powerful. Um, so that's step 10. Step 11 is, prayer and meditation. I believe this program is a spiritual program. Uh, I need to improve upon my meditation, to be honest. I do pray daily to my higher power, but from both a religious and spiritual standpoint. But I think it's important that I can improve that area of my life. There are times that I don't meditate and I use excuses. I've got to get to work. But frankly, in active addiction, I was self-centered, as they say in the big book. In recovery, I'm a healthy version of selfish. And for me, if I don't implement some form of self-care, like meditating to my higher power or, asking for guidance, um, then, I could set myself back. And so I appreciate the question because it's a reminder I needed with step 11 to improve on my meditation and spiritual practice as well as my religious practice. And obviously, I talked about step 12 being of service and how important that is to me. I hope, uh, I hope to Brindy, if I'm pronouncing that, or Brindy, that I'm pronouncing it right. Thank you for asking that question. Um, it says, I feel overwhelmed with just given step 10 instructions and seem so constant. Uh, you know, that's a fair statement, feeling overwhelmed. There's many reasons why I feel overwhelmed by the steps or when I was doing them, and our sponsees feel overwhelmed. And this is a great opportunity when we feel overwhelmed to talk to people, the quality people in our inner circle, our sponsor, if you have one, or I'm sure you do if you're working in step 10, or your sober peers, you know. That's why when you go to meetings, or when I go to meetings, I give out a phone list because if usually the new members don't yet have a sponsor. But yeah, I would say if you're overwhelmed, be kind to yourself. That's one of many beautiful gifts we can give ourselves is just be kind to ourselves. Like I was so judgmental and critical of myself, which was one of my other many, defects of character. Today, I try to be kind to myself. I mean, there's times I'm hard on myself. I'm human. There's times, that I just need to sit with my emotions and accept that for this moment, I'm not being kind to myself and I'm being overly critical and just sit with that and feel it and cry. I cry all the time. I still have some somatic traumatic experiences when I watch things on TV and I feel tears just, coming down. And, I think it's beautiful. I enjoy crying. I'm not embarrassed to cry. Um, I still have pain um, for all the reasons, I've talked about. So for anyone who's overwhelmed with step 10 or any step, I encourage you to invite you to speak with your sponsor. Um, Another question I'm seeing here is what specific tools of recovery helped you to overcome chasing money and material uh, selfishly? So gambling was my primary addiction. I think that's why you're asking this question about money, Raj. And for me, um, I hated gambling, and I had a lot of money. But when I was coaching a youth sports team in the community I lived in, and this assistant coach asked me if I wanted to gamble on sports because I loved watching sports. And I said, sure, and started out with making this up a $50 bet. And then the behavioral addiction of gambling is very progressive. And then I caught the fever, I caught the disease, if you will. And I started to make poor choices, and $50 became, in gambling, we don't really talk about the numbers because that's like, it's just disrespectful. It's not about how much one bet or how much one drinks. If you're a gambler, you're a gambler. If you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. Not measured by dollar value in gambling. But I gambled a lot of money, and it became so much money. And all I did was, and then so what happened was, I didn't want my wife to find out that I was using her own money. So I just came up with this really poor idea which unfortunately was implemented. Let me borrow money from client A. So the only client I'll talk about that I took money from, only because she went public with this when I was sentenced, was Lannis Morissette. She was the first direct victim of my crime. And let's just say that the first weekend I thought when I bet and I lost, let me just borrow 25,000 from Lannis. Really? You're going to borrow money? The intent was there to win it back, right? I'm going to win this back. Well, 1 week goes by, I didn't win it back. 2 weeks go by, and before you know it, I embezzled a lot of money from her over a few, early part of my 6 year run. After, taking X dollars from her, I went to another client and embezzled. And it was the only way I could overcome it, to be honest, with the ego that I had and all the other defects of character, was to get caught. And so subconsciously, I was told and I believed by the professionals that I was subconsciously trying to kill myself. At the end of my 5+ year runs, up to almost 6 years, with the drugs and the gambling, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't believe what I was doing. And now doing cocaine with coronary artery disease, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on top of the gambling, I was afraid when Siren would come, come get me. I wanted to get caught. I couldn't live in that fear anymore. But then waking up in wet sheets, my heart racing, and I have coronary artery disease, and the suicidal ideation. And, what kept me from not killing myself was being able to identify reasons to live. As I mentioned earlier, my 3 beautiful sons who mean the world to me today, and even my ex-wife is very important to me, even though we don't have a relationship today, and my mother and my stepfather. And you know what? Today, I would probably add, and not probably, I would likely add myself as a reason to live. But an active addiction, I didn't care about myself. But today, if I were to encounter suicidal ideation, which I haven't, but if I did, because again, I'm not perfect, um, I could identify myself as a reason to live. And so that's how I overcame chasing money. But ultimately, I had to get caught. It was my higher powers time telling me, you know what, Schmuck, you've done enough harm to people. Now it's time for you to face the consequences. You're sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, and you need to trust me. And I didn't trust him early in my recovery. Um, but today he's the only person I trust the most, and I owe my life to my higher power and to this program and to many other people outside of the program. Not many, a few other people outside of the program. And the materiality, also in that question about, selfishly, this is the life of a gambler, right? Living a life of grandiosity, fantasy, totally the antithesis of reality. But, I was materialistic. I liked good things. I liked, fancy vacations with the family, but I could have done that without gambling. But so I didn't use the gambling winnings, which were very few winnings in my entire run, um, for purposes of fueling, my addictions, or excuse me, fueling my lifestyle. That lifestyle was from my prior career, and that was that. But I still, even going to Las Vegas to gamble, I pretended I was a big shot sitting at a private blackjack table. So I did blackjack and sports gambling, snorting cocaine, cheating on my wife. I mean, I was a horrible person. I was an awful husband. I thought I was a good husband. I thought I was a great father. I was an average to good father in hindsight, because as I reflect on my parenting, um, I was physically present for my ex-wife and for my kids, but I was not emotionally present. And today I value so much the importance of being emotionally present when around anyone, frankly. And because we want to be heard. The persons I'm around want to be heard and deserve to be heard. So I hope I answered that question about materiality. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions at this moment. Any other questions?
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support, or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'll jump in. I'd love to hear if you have one more moment about.
Have as much time as you want. Sorry to interrupt.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all you shared. I'm getting so much out of this, and if people have to hop off, of course you can. No judgments. I know we started late. We're going over. Can you talk about your spiritual experience? What kind of spiritual experience you have? What, yeah.
So when you say the spiritual experience, are you referring to like that pink cloud?
No, like it says in the big book, some people it's a bright light, some people it's slowly, I know there are different types of spiritual experiences. As outlined in the
Sure.
big book. Did you have an initial spiritual experience aside from getting caught and realizing that it was showtime? Do you have a particular?
People ask me that question, and the answer is honestly, I didn't have that like crossroad momentary, spiritual experience, like where like I felt like I was on a cloud. What I did have is I hit rock bottom, and I was given an opportunity to either, it literally wasn't given the opportunity because of my choices. I was sentenced to prison, and that I think to me was my rock bottom. you know, Going and surrounding myself with diverse population of about 450 people in a federal prison camp, people from all walks of life, and actually entering there still with judgment. And then I realized that as I took the time to get to know most inmates, regardless of race, regardless of socioeconomic status, or other differences that one might have or I might. Now, if I took the time to get to know a person one by one, for the most part, they have the same soul as I do. They love their family. They just made poor choices. And so I realized that who am I to judge? And I think the moment I walked into prison, if I had any sort of like that spiritual experience moment, it would probably be walking in my orange Crocs and a jumps in my green pants and green federal prison camp uniform, uh, down from the detention place where I was admitted down into the camp. That was probably the moment where I realized, wow, this is what my life is for the next 6 years. Thankfully, it turned out to be 33 months. So I think that's my spiritual experience if I had one, but I never really had one.
Wow, wow, that's quite a visual there, eh? Wow.
Yeah, it was. So someone asked
Like,
a question. I'm sorry, did you want to continue? My apologies for interrupting.
no, quite a visual. Please, yeah, it's a great question she put in the chat. Go ahead.
So feel privileged. How do you feel privileged instead of burdened by working a strong program? There's no such thing as for me using the word burden. That's why you'll hear people, and I also course correct it too if I don't hear myself saying it. Like I don't have to do anything. I get to do it, which is the privilege in and of itself, and frankly, an honor. I get to be of service. I get to ask for help when I'm struggling. I get to say I'm proud of myself today. I don't have to. This is the privilege because I'm working a program of recovery. That's the privilege to earn the rewards of a solid program. I'm not given this, it's just not being passed to me. I've got to put in, I don't see, I said I've got to. I get to put in the work. That's the privilege for me. It's absolutely not a burden. Do at times I get frustrated, in a day, but that's not related to the program. The frustration is related to my internal dialogue, my defects of character, not accepting life on life's terms in that moment. Maybe that's the burden, but the truth is, I have the privilege and get to course correct that through the tools that I have, including but not limited to those that I've talked about, like self awareness, transitioning to positive self talk, and calling people and talking to people and asking for help. Because again, I say this a lot, I'm far from perfect. I'm a human being. I have emotions that sometimes I don't connect well with. Despite being in the profession of helping others connect to their emotions, I'm transparent to the clients when I walk in the treatment center. If I have, if I'm sad today, I'm going to ask them to give me a few moments and take a time out. I'm not embarrassed to do those things anymore. And so it's a great question about feeling privileged and the burden to work a program. It's an honor to work this program because if not for this program, one, I wouldn't be here speaking to you, all of you, beautiful people, and hopefully you got something out of this. Or I wouldn't be able to wake up in the morning and go to a job. I wouldn't be able to turn on water because I have a shower because I'm paying rent. If I wasn't in this program, I wouldn't be able to drink a cup of coffee because I wouldn't be able to afford these things, not just financially, just to live a life every day or most days trying to better myself. So I appreciate that question, and I hope I answered it okay for you. Any other questions?
That's such a great answer. Such a great answer about being transparent. I'm going to hit you with one more, and I guess we'll do the final one. It's kind of a whopper, but what do you have to say to those of us who are in the bedevilment? You know, the big book talks about being prey to misery, having trouble with personal relationships. Those of us who are sponsoring others, you know, let's say, oh, for example, me, you know, in the rooms for years, more than a decade, working with others, doing service, and yet, you know, hold on, sorry, I'm in a emergency rescue organization. It keeps getting a call. But if you could talk about the bedevilments, you know, for those of us who are recovered, for those of us who have been in the rooms. Now that
Lost you. I don't know if you're still there.
yeah, I am. I'm here. If you could talk about those of us who are, you know, having the bedevilments, those of us who are still suffering, even though we are technically recovered.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what this program is. It's not, I like to think it's a simple program. I like to try to make it a simple program, but it's a hard program, there are life challenges. And today, I hope this addresses, your question, which is we are going to be faced with challenges as individuals, as human beings, and with what frequency, it's different for everybody. But, when I face challenges, I'll speak from my own experience. I view challenges today as an opportunity for me to overcome the challenge in the day, in the moment. I view challenges as an opportunity to learn, you know, uh, why I'm making this up, but like, why didn't I get a raise, at the end of the year? And I'm not saying I did or I didn't. I'm just using an example. I felt I earned it. I'm gonna be, hypothetically, I'm gonna be disappointed in myself, like, because finances is something I don't make a lot of money. Sometimes I don't have a lot of food in my refrigerator. That's, I wish I had more food in my refrigerator. I wish I had a couch that wasn't, ripped up a little bit and looked a little cleaner. Whatever these challenges are that I face, there's a reason why my higher power is bringing these challenges to me. And I learn to accept those challenges as an opportunity. And I may not know what the message my higher power is sending me in that moment, but I'll know at some point when I'm supposed to what that message was. So for me, that's part of
Amazing.
that.
Amazing. What I'm hearing here is God is everything or God is nothing. I'm going to ask you to pray us out.
Thank you. God,
Sorry.
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you for
Amen.
letting me.
Jonathan,
Amen.
thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, everyone.